Dawntrail added a trait that probably many of you have ran into, but didn't actually know that you were running into it. This is the Fisher's Instinct trait that was added in 7.0. It's a really interesting trait, and it's really cool, but also has a lot of questions around it. So let's dig in. Fisher's Instinct is, like I said, a level 50 trait that was added with Dawntrail in patch 7.0. And what it does is, while you're under the effect of Fisher's Intuition or Spearfisher's Intuition, there is a chance that the intuition duration is reset back to its full duration when you are catching certain fish. And this chance to trigger varies between fish. Basically, there is a chance to take a, say, 3-minute intuition, and if you catch certain fish, it will have a chance to go back to 3 minutes. Now, the fish that has a chance to trigger this is the fish that are used to actually trigger the intuition in the first place. So if you're going for sea butterfly, the vampiric tapestry isn't going to do anything, but the sky fairy and the scorpion flies both have a chance to reset sea butterfly's intuition back to full. If it mattered, like Moratecta could. It doesn't matter with Moratecta because it doesn't have that thing, but like shapeshifters and shadeshifters both are used for the Aquamaton in. They count. Minstrel fish would not. It is only the fish that are used to trigger the intuition, and every fish has a variable chance of that intuition being refreshed. And the fun part is, it isn't the same chance between every fish. Like, it's completely different for every single one. Hedgemole crickets and armorfish have a completely different chance of refreshing than functional proto-hropkins do for Opabinia. And they're both in Heavensward. Like, it is kind of wild how this whole thing was set up. And as of recording, I probably should have double-checked to see if there was actually any sort of correlation between all of them. But from what we can tell, there isn't like a mathematical way of like, oh, the bite rate is directly impacting the intuition's chance of being refreshed. Like, there hasn't really been any sort of correlation found. I know that some people have been doing a lot of work on this, but as you might understand, to properly test this, you have to get a lot of intuitions, and then you have to maintain those intuitions, and some of those intuitions are very hard to trigger once, let alone potentially twice. So this trait is basically at the surface a really nice kind of quality of life. Because if maybe you accidentally trigger something a little bit early, you can try and recover it. It does help address the issue. Well, I don't know if it's really an issue, but it does help address the thing that you also may not have known about intuition, is if you catch an intuition fish while the intuition buff is active, that fish does not count towards building of the next intuition. So, for example, if you have, say you're going for sea butterfly. Sea butterfly requires 3 scorpion flies and 3 sky fairies. If you get the intuition for sea butterfly, which is a minute long, and in that minute you catch another sky fairy, that sky fairy that was caught during the intuition does not count towards rebuilding the next intuition. That count only starts once the intuition falls off. So what this does is that it gives the fish that you catch during the intuition at least a chance to potentially reset the intuition back to full, which is, again, kind of cool. But it does kind of address that one weird little bit of feedback that we had that wasn't really feedback, but it was something that a lot of people were like, man, that's kind of rough. But also it makes sense, and we just kind of accepted was okay. And then Square Enix was like, no, actually, you know what? Why don't we give those fish some value? Let's give the fish, those intuition fish some value. Like if you're going for Charbonnet with Ice Fairy, now there's a chance that you could refresh the intuition while just going for Charbonnet. Because you need Charbonnet to get the intuition. And so if you also are going for the Ice Fairy, you need Ice Fairy to get Charbonnet's intuition, and you have to mooch the Ice Fairy to catch Charbonnet, you're going to be catching them, anyways. Now there's a chance to refresh the intuition, and you don't have to build it again. Same thing with armor fish and hedgemole crickets. All of the, there's a variety of other fish, but basically any fish that has a mooch that requires a fish that has a mooch, and that fish that is mooched is required for intuition, this is actually kind of useful for. But is it useful to chase it? And so far the answer has kind of been not really. It's really nice when it comes up, but if we haven't found a fish, nor have we been given a fish, with one exception, that has basically been like, yes, if you are running low on time, if you the strategy becomes give up on the int, focus on refreshing it. We don't really have any of that. There is no there's no fish where we're given a short int and we have to expand it. There have been fish in Dawn Trail that could have had that, like Esperance Carp, Giga Giant Snakehead, maybe Vagrant Keeper. But in reality, this is really just that happened, that's kind of nice trait right now. Now, the Dawn Trail Legends, I'm recording this before the Dawn Trail Legends come out, that could change with the Legends, and that would be cool. But right now, we don't really see that because of the last bit of that trait, which is chance to trigger this effect differs between fish. The chance for it to trigger isn't super reliable. And because it's not reliable, and because of how these fish have been designed and historically put together, it doesn't really make sense to just lose out on potentially 3 or 4 casts or a slap to chase after something that you can't guarantee, especially when some of the refresh rates are kind of low, like 2 or 3%. Again, that's variable though, because functional proto-Hropkins have a very high chance to refresh. I did some testing on those early on, and I think my number, which was a low sample size, so don't hold on to it too much, was somewhere in the northern, high 70s, mid 80s% chance on catch to refresh. And even then, it's not amazing. And technically, you could get away with that because you can use Ambitious Lure to force the Hropkin bite. But at that point, why would you on such a short intuition when it's so easy to rebuild? There's really not a need to, because if you lose intuition, you can almost get it back instantly. And we're finding that with a lot of fish pre-Dawn Trail, that's the case, because they weren't designed with this in mind. They were designed, to go for the fish, wait, finish the intuition, cool, build it again. A lot of fish sometimes don't even have an opportunity. There's no need to refresh it because the triggering fish aren't even available, like lancet fish. And some of them, especially in Dawn Trail, and this was one of the biggest gripes I had so far with the intuitions in Dawn Trail, is the intuitions last the full window duration. You're not really seeing fish where a refresh would be useful. Shin Snuffler could be really cool if it was the same intuition duration of, roughly 5 minutes and 50 seconds. If the window wasn't already 5 to 6 minutes, you're not really, there's no real need to go and try and chain the intuition for an extra minute. Like, you're not going to get a ton of casts out of that. That's like maybe 2 casts at the end because you're going to be low on GP. You're going to want to try and get a slap again. Like, it's just not going to work. Esperance Carp, we had a couple of conversations around potentially seeing Esperance Carp having an like going after an iteration, the Golden Days, I think they were, not the Scarlet Queens, or the Scarlet Fish. There was 2 fish that you need for Esperance Carp, and I did not prepare them because I didn't know I'd be talking about this. But one of those fish has a pretty high refresh rate. I mean, not terribly high, but enough that we were, during testing, seeing refresh times push its Esperance Carp's 5-minute intuition into like 20 plus minutes. I think I personally held onto a single Esperance Carp intuition for 21 minutes. I think I was like 1 or 2 ARZ an hour short of a full weather window, which is 23 minutes. Which is cool. That is ridiculous. And that would be so much more interesting if Esperance Carp didn't have a 2-hour window. It's only a 2 ARZ an hour window. It's just there. There's no need to deal with the intuition refresh. It's really only there for some fish where it's kind of handy. The other option where it could be really useful is in ocean fishing, but those intuitions are way too short, and the triggering fish for those intuitions are either not easily able to be gotten, rare to get, or by the time that you do end up getting one, the intuition's over. And you might as well just get another one. So it's like, this is a really cool trait. And it begs the question, should it be? Like, should we be expecting it to be a like core mechanic for a fish? Or should we just be looking at it as a nice quality of life? And right now, it's acting like a nice quality of life. Really, what Fisher's instinct is just a nice quality of life to give you a little bit of a chance to, maybe you accidentally reel in a fish. Maybe you have a chance to refresh it. Maybe you're in a situation like with sidereal whale. One of the things with sidereal whale back in Endwalker, this was pre-Fisher's Instinct, was some folks held onto their Philania or their EBEs or whatever. They held on they held on to triggering intuition until right before the Philania was gone and its window closed at 4 a.m. so that they didn't get baited by a Philania bite and waste all that time on something, that wasn't the sidereal whale. Now, was that really necessary? No, we did find out that the bite rate for a sidereal whale is actually a little bit higher, but it's like, it's negligible. It's still the same % chance whether Philania is up or not. It's really just a how do you feel about it type thing. Nowadays, I continue with my recommendation of just go for sidereal whale. If you happen to catch a Philania, cool, maybe there's a chance that it'll refresh. And if it does, even better, because now you can fully take advantage of that refresh. Which is cool, but again, it's just like one of those fish where it's like it doesn't, like, it works, but because it's not reliable, it's not guaranteed, there's no way to force the refresh, we can't plan around it. It's really just like it's nice that it happened, but it's nothing that we chase. And in the places where we could chase it, it's not amazing to chase after. I think Opabinia was the other example that I gave where, functional proto-crop can have a very high chance of refreshing. the intuition. I think when I was testing at one point, I had 5 functional proto-Hopkins refresh, and I was maintaining the Opabinia intuition, which is like 2 or 3 minutes long, for 10-15 minutes, which is cool, but I was also focusing on catching nothing but functional proto-Hopkins, which you can do off of the Opabinia mooch, so there is that consideration. Sorry, not the Opabinia mooch. The mooch to get Opabinia, which is platinum fish. You can mooch platinum fish into Opabinia. And you can also mooch platinum fish into functional proto-Hopkins, but you can also mooch them into like Alligator blade shark, Opabinia, the eels, and barrel eye. So it's like not super reliable. But you can also switch off of fiend worms and then force the bite using Ambitious Lair if you want. But then you're wasting a mooch, and then at that point I would just say go for the mooch, and then it would be like, well, if you get a functional proto-Hopkin, yeah, reel it in just to see what happens. Like, that's it. But it's not a definitely do this. It's if you don't do it, it's fine because you can get functional proto-Hopkins really quick. If anything, it just saves you some GP, which is probably like the main thing for Fisher's Instinct is it can save you GP, especially if you're going for, say, Charbonnet or Armorfish, which require 5-6 different, like 5 or 6 fish to catch to get the intuition. That's a couple of double hooks and triple hooks that you don't need to spend, and it's a little bit easier. But the refresh rates on both of those fish, Ice Fairy and Hedgehog Cricket, are kind of low, so it's like, again, it comes down to, oh, my intuition just refreshed. That's nice. Not necessarily like oh, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And it's kind of just like, it would be really nice to see this mechanic become a little bit more reliable, and or at least have a fish where it could be reliable so we could at least see what that would feel like. There is one mission in Acacia where so far there has not really been any sort of reported failure of intuition refreshing off of a fish. And that mission is the 3rd Legendary Fisher mission, which is Master Legendary Botanifish Survey, and then one other that I actually just remembered, which is the Northern Central Specimen Survey, which is an EX+. Sylvan Swell is in Northern Central Specimen Survey, and the Topiary Gibble is in the Legendary Botanifish. Both of those have recorded, as of now, 100% refresh rates on their intuitions, which is kind of cool. For specifically the Master Legendary Botanifish Survey, one of the things that I was looking at when going for a high score on that mission was actually specifically seeing, is it worth it to go for the Gibble refresh if you aren't getting the Topiary Serpent bite that you need? Which is an interesting strategy because you can force it using the refined midge larva, because that's how, refined bait only is going to be catching the fish specifically for the intuition that is needed for that. However, it is a whole lot quicker to just get the intuition anyway. So it's like I experimented with a little bit, like using like maybe the refined midge larva would be better to spend on intuition refreshes, but the bite rates for the Topiary Serpent is still relatively high, and high enough that it's almost not really worth it. So we were so close on that one, like really, really close. For Grand Green Guppy, which is the intuition fish for Northern Central Specimen, if I remember correctly, that one's actually like a timed mission, so it's not even completely worth it to do that, even though it's weird because the fish that you would want is also the highest bite rate. So it's like you're going to potentially be slapping it anyways. So why would you worry about, like, you can't refresh it if you're not going to catch it. So it's a little bit more testing needs to be done to see how it feels. But because it's cosmic exploration, the testing is different because it's a completely different setup than overworld fishing. A little bit more, experimentation needs to happen. But it does exist now. And this was the exception I was talking about earlier. It does exist. The Master Legendary Botanifish Survey and EX Northern Central Specimen Survey both have refresh rates with fish at 100%. But also we have just not, it's like not really something that we figured out that's like, oh yeah, definitely do this because you definitely need it. It just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't click well. So we don't. I'm not too sure where I was going to end up going with this. Basically, without basically saying like, cool, the thing we wanted to exist, and from what we can tell, it's not really worth it. It just leaves Fisher's Instinct as a trait as just a nice to have. And truthfully, yeah, it is really nice to have. I'm really happy to see this because it does at least answer that one problem that we had before Dawn Trail, which was, oops, I keep catching these intuition fish. Man, I really wish that it counted towards my next intuition. And it addresses that. And I think it does it well. I think that there is more expansion that they could do. Like they could make it so that the Fisher's Instinct actually becomes more relevant, or could be more relevant, but they have to be very careful because if they don't, then if they make it too powerful, then a lot of things break. So have to be really, really careful with that one. But it's a good skill, or excuse me, it's a good trait, not a skill. And I think Fisher's Instinct is a really good. I think Fisherman's, intuition is a very good mechanic. It's very unique. It's very interesting, and there's a lot of play that can come out of it. But with this trait coming in Dawn Trail and the Dawn Trail fish that supposedly would have been designed around this trait also coming out, and none of them really seem to have any play with it, I kind of want to lean towards Fisher's Instinct being more of just a quality of life, oh, that's nice, type of trait, rather than a core mechanic that they wanted to actually play with. Now, maybe in saying this, somebody, at Square Enix will be like, oh, maybe this is something that we can play with. And maybe that's what they were doing with Cosmic with those 2 missions. Maybe they were just seeing what happens, seeing what we say. And what I would say about that is, that's cool. Let's try that a little bit more, because I think it could be I think it could be fun to have short overworld intuition fish again, like Snowy Paraxis. Bear with me for a second, but set up in a way that you have to continually chain the intuition to keep it going. Giga Giant Snakehead was probably the closest that we got to this, but it fell under the same sort of trap that all the other intuition fish in Dawn Trail, or most of the other intuition fish in Dawn Trail, fell under, which is the duration of its int is basically the same duration as its window, so there's really no reason to try and refresh or even rebuild a second intuition. I talk about this a lot with Teodo Teyun in another video that I'll have linked below, where we talk about the 7.4 discovery and a little bit of a retro on that. But yeah, it's Fisher's Instinct. It's a really cool trait. You've definitely seen it. You've probably ran into it. And if you didn't, now you know it exists. So you know what's going to happen whenever you hear like the little sound, and you get, jump scared by the fact that you get a refreshed intuition. Now you know what it is. As a quick side note, the one thing I didn't mention is that every intuition fish now has a third message. Beforehand, they just used to have 2, which was you have the intuition and the intuition is gone. They wrote intuition lines for every intuition to basically give a little bit more flavor to whenever it refreshes. So, for example, the one for Charbonnet that I always remember. Charbonnet is when you get the intuition, it talks about like the smell of a rat, and then the stench of a rat, and then when the intuition falls off, it says the stench, like the stench has abated. For Charbonnet, whenever you get an intuition refresh, it goes the stench has intensified. So it has some fun little flavor in that too. I should have mentioned that like 20 minutes ago, but I completely forgot. It's a fun little flavor bit that you can keep an eye out on, and there's a ton of fun things for it. But that's all I have on Fisher's Instinct this week for this fruity little ramble. Thank you again for listening. Let me know what you think about Fisher's Instinct, and I guess Fisher's Instinct and Intuition in the comments and whatnot, because that's what YouTube tells me to tell you to do. But until next time, good luck and happy fishing.